There have been many developments in the House investigations into the first family's international business dealings recently. There's one committee trying to get an FBI file alleging that President Biden took bribes. There's another IRS whistleblower who's alleging there's a cover-up in the investigation. Amid all of this, there was a Harvard-Harris poll this month that found that 53% of the public, including a fourth of Democrats, believe, quote, Joe Biden was involved with his son in an illegal influence peddling scheme. There's, of course, evidence that the president interacted with his relatives, associates from China, Mexico, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Ukraine. So what do you say to the majority of Americans who believe that the president is himself corrupt?
All right, let's go. Let's go.
He ran away. He ran away. That's John Kirby, the poor, pathetic excuse of a national security spokesman. Makes you feel real secure, doesn't it? Seeing the national security spokesperson run away and hide behind his desk. But we're going to find that according to more and more political pundits, the end of the road for the Biden crime family is indeed nigh. A full reckoning is at hand, and we're going to see precisely why a growing number of observers do in fact believe that all of this is going to inexorably lead to the Biden's convictions. Greetings, everyone. It is Livestream Friday. The weekend is here. I am your host, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, here to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe. Smack all those subscribe buttons, YouTube, Rumble, and the like. We are live on both Rumble and YouTube. We got super chats up, some super stickers. Send me your questions. I will answer them in due course. We have got amazing developments in the growing Biden crime scandals. The legacy media is just utterly besides themselves. They're doing everything they possibly can to cooperate as the Praetorian Guard of our permanent political class. They're doing everything they possibly can to cooperate with the powers that be, to cover up everything, to bury this, but it's not working. It keeps getting worse. God bless the parallel alternative dissenting media here, dissident media, I should say. We're going to find out precisely why a growing number of pundits out there believe that these scandals will indeed end up bringing down not just Biden, not just the Biden crime family, the whole lot of them, but the whole system itself, the deep state three-letter agencies, as well as the pathetic Marxist media itself. This is beyond huge. All that and more on the special live stream Friday broadcast. Again, super chats and super stickers are up. Send me your questions. I will answer them in due course. And before you do anything else, make sure to click on that link below and visit our good friends over at Home Title Lock. Gang, I got to admit, I was absolutely shocked when I was recently shown just how easy it is to access the deed to my house, and not just access it, but actually change it. I mean, the deed to our homes is the only document that proves we own it. But the problem is that the deeds to all our homes are now online, and criminals are free to find your deed, forge your signature, refile as the new owner of your home, take tons of loans out using your home's equity, and then stick you with all the debt. But that is where our good friends over at Home Title Lock come in. Gang, they're amazing. Home Title Lock gives you the peace of mind that the deed to your home is absolutely and completely protected. Click on that link below right now. Use promo code TurleyTalks, and all you have to do is enter your address for your no-obligation home title scan to see if you've already been a victim of deed theft. That's a $100 value, absolutely and totally free with my promo code TurleyTalks. Gang, don't wait for the worst to happen, only to regret you didn't do something about when you could have. Do what I've done. Do what countless patriots have done. Click on that link below right now and secure your home today. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. So what you just saw from John Kirby there is actually a cowardice that is par for the course for the whole of the White House and what they've been doing of late. The New York Post has just published one of their studies, and it found that White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, the new standard for diversity hire absurdity, answers on average only 2% of questions regarding the increasing laundry list of Biden crime scandals. As more and more evidence mounts that the Bidens are indeed incurably corrupt, the White House answers those allegations less and less. And of course, they're doing everything they can to divert attention away from themselves. As you've guessed, all of all of this walls closing in activity mounts, it explains precisely why Trump is getting indicted more. I mean, every time Biden's corruption becomes more and more evident, we're coincidentally seeing more and more phony charges brought up against Trump from the Biden so-called Justice Department. I mean, this is a playbook that was exposed by the Brazilian political philosopher Olavo de Carvalho, God rest his soul, wonderful man. And what he saw in Marxist Brazil, as well as what he was seeing in the United States, having lived here for many decades, he saw how the corrupt deep state always accuses others of their own crimes. It's called projection. All you have to do is look at what the legacy media is accusing, right, the opposition of, in this case, patriots, MAGA folk, and so forth. That's the crimes that they're trying to cover up that are being perpetrated by the permanent political class. They always project onto others the very crimes that they themselves commit, so as to deflect attention away from themselves. The pattern seems to be one of alignment. So if you can effectively frame someone else for the crime that you're committing, no one's looking at you for committing that very same crime, because you're basically given cover by a perfect overlap of accusation. If somebody's committing one crime and you're committing a completely other crime, then the media, the watchdog, the supposed watchdogs, would be able to cover these two different stories. But if you can focus your crime entirely on someone else and frame them for doing it, as long as someone else is being accused of your very crimes, no one else bothers to look at you for doing exactly the same thing. And yet, the irony here is that every time, this is amazing, gang, every time Trump gets more and more indictments thrown at him, his approval rating goes up. His approval rating, his polls, his fundraising, they all go up. Just ask Ron DeSantis. By contrast, take a look at this. Take a look at this B-roll here. That's a Biden rally. And that's what it looked like in South Carolina the other day. It looks and sounds like a freaking funeral. The people are dead quiet. They're literally sitting on their hands, and barely anyone's there. I mean, it's a funeral for somebody nobody cares about. Biden is literally imploding in the polls. We talked about the latest that's absolutely terrifying, the Democrats. It's a brand new echelon poll of likely voters in battleground states, swing states. And according to the poll where the election held today, Trump would crush Biden by 7 points, 48-41. So we're talking battleground states like Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Trump would utterly humiliate Biden by 7 points. Overall, nationally, Trump is beating Biden by a point, according to the poll, 43-42. And the poll also shows that Trump beats Biden in terms of favorability, 43-40. But it gets worse. Not only did the poll find Trump beating Biden, both nationally as well as in all swing states, but 33% of Democrats nationally and 34% of Democrats in swing states said they want somebody else other than Biden. They would support someone else other than Biden. 1 in 3 Democrats, whether nationally or in swing states, want someone else other than Joe Blow, right? The cocaine commander-in-chief. And make no mistake, this is all tied to an increasing evidence of his corruption and the corruption of the Biden administration as a whole, including the Justice Department. According to the latest Rasmussen polling, 55% of likely voters believe that Hunter Biden got special treatment, in his sweetheart plea deal. 55% think he got off because of his DNA, his genetics. That's not good. At the same time, according to the latest Harvard-Harris poll, 55% of the population, isn't that interesting, believes that the federal indictment against President Trump is totally politically motivated. 55%, 6 in 10 think this is nothing more than a political hack job. 56% believe that this is a deliberate interference in the 2024 election by Biden's Justice Department. People aren't buying this. They're not, but the legacy media is doing everything it can to black this stuff out. And yet a majority of likely voters think Biden is corrupt as the day is long. And here I want to highlight an excellent piece by Victor Davis Hanson entitled, "This Scandal Will Lead to the Biden's Convictions for Serious Felonies." And I think he makes an excellent argument here. Hanson makes the argument that more and more people are becoming aware of the blatant and explicit tax evasion and illicit business dealings involving Hunter Biden. We now know that Hunter Biden has schemed to hide millions of dollars, and we now know that President Biden himself was complicit in these illicit activities. We know from the big guy email. We know it from the latest WhatsApp text messages, which we'll get into in a sec. We know it from the photo evidence of Biden taking pictures with Hunter's business partners. We know it from their shared bank account. And we know it from eyewitness testimony from the likes of Tony Bobblehead, who's Hunter's old business partner, who has testified that he was present at business dealings that involved Joe Blow himself. So more and more people know Biden is lying about his knowledge of his total lack of knowledge of his son's business dealings. More and more people are learning that Joe and Hunter received substantial sums of money from Chinese and Ukrainian sources in exchange for leveraging Joe Biden's influence and position in government. More and more people are learning that Biden didn't pay taxes on that money. And for Hanson, Victor Davis Hanson, when all is said and done, that is the key. That's the linchpin to this whole thing blowing up on Joe Blow. According to Hanson, you can have corrupt business dealings overseas, but that's pretty far removed from your average American in their everyday life. You can have corruption in the White House, but that's still far removed from the average American's daily life. You can have corruption in the Justice Department, but again, it's still, it's still pretty far removed from the average American. But every American has to pay taxes. Well, better said, every tax-paying American has to deal with the IRS, right? Every American taxpayer has to deal with the IRS. The IRS is not far removed from our lives. And being deathly afraid of being targeted by the IRS is not far removed from all of our lives. And not until now has the IRS itself ever been under a shadow of such corruption as per the IRS whistleblower on Hunter Biden. We now know that the IRS had in its possession a WhatsApp text message for all to see between Hunter Biden and a Chinese Communist Party official that claimed that Joe Biden was in the room when Hunter was sending it. And it was a threat that if this Chinese official didn't come up with millions of dollars and sending it to Hunter, that Joe would get even with him. The IRS knew about Joe and Hunter's illicit financial activities. And Hanson's point here is that an increasing number of Americans are finding out about this. And he ends up asking the simple question: has the IRS ever applied so blatantly, deliberately, and explicitly one standard of tax enforcement to elites while at the same time applying quite another to everyday Americans? If any one of us had ever been found sending out text messages like that, we'd be in court. The IRS would be down our throats. But here's the problem. If a critical mass of Americans come to believe that charge of unequal treatment in tax compliance were indeed true, then Humpty Dumpty-like, the entire American system of revenue collection would shatter. In other words, millions of Americans might just shrug and say, hey, if Joe Blow Biden, president of the United States, and his criminally minded son get away with avoiding millions of dollars in taxes, then should not I, a nobody, at least have the right to avoid hundreds of dollars in taxes? In other words, this Biden corruption scandal, now that it has actually reached the IRS, actually has the potential to bring the entire system down. It's a fascinating argument. When all is said and done, because it has now reached the IRS, it is reached an institution with which we are all familiar and with which we all have to deal with. We don't all have to deal with overseas business dealings. We don't all have to deal with the White House. We don't all have to deal with the Justice Department or the CIA, or whatever, but we all got to deal with the IRS. And now when we see how the IRS itself has been compromised with the Bidens, now that has the potential of bringing Humpty Dumpty like the entire system down. Millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of taxpayers are going to give a huge, huge middle finger to the IRS after seeing this. But it gets even better. But first, as you know, gang, the left is bringing the culture war to corporate America. That's why redballoon.work is so important for the nation's future. Red Balloon is a first of its kind job board that connects values-aligned workers with values-aligned companies. If you're a business owner looking for job seekers, stop using the woke job boards like Indeed and ZipRecruiter. Instead, post your jobs on Red Balloon and find people who build your company culture, not tear it down. Go to redballoon.work/Turley to get 10% off your first month's job posting. And if you're looking for a job, post your resume on Red Balloon and find an employer who won't force you to pledge allegiance to crazy leftist ideas. There's a groundswell of Americans standing up to the force-fed liberal culture in our schools, our businesses, and our halls of government. Redballoon.work is a huge step in the right direction. Visit them today and sign up to support them in their mission. All right, gang. What VDH is getting at here is actually something we talk a lot about on this channel, and it's a process known as delegitimization. It's a fancy schmancy word describing the process by which public institutions basically erode, they collapse in terms of widespread trust and confidence. And you just look at what happened with the Berlin Wall and Eastern Europe, that and Soviet Union itself, that corrosion can lead to a sudden and colossal fall. And what Hans is basically arguing here is we're starting to see with this Biden corruption a comparable erosion in trust and confidence in our own government, which risks the entire system itself. So, for example, according to a new Gallup poll, among all G7 nations, the United States government has the least amount of confidence among its citizens. Just 31% of surveyed adults trust and support the United States government, 3 in 10. Now, I've often said this on this channel, but every poll out there shows that we are, right now as we speak, most likely the single most divided nation in the world. And I am not talking about divisions between the people. I'm not. I mean, the legacy media tries to make it appear that way. That's certainly the way the legacy media tries to always make it appear. Even just the red state, blue state map is misleading, because when you look at blue states like Oregon, for example, right? The super majority of the counties, generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, the super majority of their counties are red. They're solid red. Oregon, 90% of the landmass of Oregon is more akin to deep red Idaho than it is super blue Portland, right? So even the red state, blue state map isn't very conducive to reality here. We have to understand that the legacy media is the one that tries to always make it appear that we, the people, are divided. And that's why we need the permanent political class to come in, or else racism would flood our people, sexism, homophobia, right? All their resentment politics go to catchphrases: insurrection, conspiracy theory, QAnon. But study after study after study demonstrates that we, the people, are actually more united than we've ever been. We're less racist than we've ever been. Racism is at an all-time low. 50 years ago, 90% of the public was against interracial marriage. Today, 90% of the public is all for it. We're less racist than we've ever been. We're more anti-war than we've ever been, even at the height of the Vietnam era. And we're collectively more suspicious and more distrusting of our government than we've ever been. The real division is between the people and the permanent political class. We are the single most divided nation in terms of the people and the permanent political class of all G7 nations. The job of the legacy media today is there to protect the neo-feudalized corporate and political aristocracy that rules rather than represents. They rule precisely because they operate according to their own values, interests, and concerns, and they ignore and they outright detest the values, interests, and concerns of the people. And what Hansen is basically arguing here is that mass awareness of look, we've already got a mass awareness of a two-tier justice system. Nobody likes it, but you hope you never have to involve yourself with the justice system, right? Again, there's still a certain level of removal. Hansen's noting that same resentment, but now recognizing a two-tiered tax system where the IRS overtly and explicitly grants privileges to our elite, all the while cracking down on the rest of us, that's enough to shatter the whole system. That's enough to shatter the system as a whole. Now, this was made even more apparent when the New York Times had to admit that Merrick Garland's Justice Department stepped in and refused to allow U.S. Attorney David Weiss to bring charges against Hunter for his numerous obvious felonies. According to the Times, in mid-2022, David Weiss reached out to the top federal prosecutor in Washington, Matthew Graves, to ask his office to pursue charges against Hunter, but was rebuffed. A similar request to prosecutors in the Central District of California, which includes LA, was also rejected. So Shapley testified. There was also a second IRS official who had been identified. He told Republicans the same story. This is all coming from the IRS, right? That episode was confirmed independently to the New York Times by a person with knowledge of the situation. What this all means is that Attorney General Merrick Garland was lying when he said that the Justice Department did not interfere with the Hunter Biden investigation involved tax fraud. And so here we have, and I would argue this is a perfect example of how corruption ultimately corrupts. When you have layers of corruption piled on top of each other, inevitably the whole system begins to rot out. The influence peddling of the Biden crime family has not only tainted the vice presidency and the presidency, it's tainted the IRS. It's tainted the Justice Department. And of course, it's tainting the legacy media. Corruption inevitably corrupts. And the seedy operation from Biden to Garland to CNN, it all appears ready to just completely implode in terms of public trust and confidence and legitimacy. And so if the powers that be want to continue to remain in power, this is how Hansen basically sums up his argument. If the powers that be want to remain in power, Hansen argues they're going to have no choice but to sacrifice Biden and the whole of the Biden crime family, lest they go full Gorbachev, lest they go full Soviet, lest they double down in every corrupt lie on the planet, and the people in mass just revolt, including members of the military. They just revolt, and the whole system comes crashing down. The threat of mass delegitimation is enough, Hansen argues, for the powers that be to take down Biden. And so Hansen believes this scandal will ultimately bring down Biden. It will do much to bring, or at least severely hamper and discredit, it already has, the three-letter agencies like the IRS and the FBI and the DOJ. And it will finally drive a stake through the heart of the credibility of the legacy media, whatever remaining credibility they may have. That, according to Hansen, is what we can ultimately expect coming out from all of this blatant Biden corruption. Nothing less than the fall of the whole system itself. Over to you, gang. Let's hear what you think. And as Josh, our moderator, assembles your questions, you have got to click on that link below and get yourself one of these puppies. I love this guy. He hangs up. I mean, you don't see, maybe I should just have him all the time like this, maybe on a little pedestal. You have got to get your very own Trumpinator 2024 bobblehead in preparation for Donald Trump's glorious reascendance to the United States presidency. I've got mine, gang, and I love him. He's my buddy. He comes in this really cool box, too. And I just keep that box and him. Maybe that's what I got to do. I got to... Glorious. What do you think? This collectible bobblehead from Proud Patriots is made with the highest quality material, and it really is a must-have for any Trump fan who wants to send some serious energy towards it shaping up to be the most glorious political comeback in history. Now, don't wait. There are just a limited number of these collectibles, and you don't want to be caught paying way more later on eBay from someone who bought it now. So whatever you do, don't wait. Click on that link below right now and show your support for Trump 2024 today. All right, Josh, what do we got? Bring them questions to me. What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? Johnny the Whiz Kid, good to hear from you, my friend. I'm worried about Japan's decline. I've been interested in a Japanese girlfriend. I'd like to bring her to America someday and take road trips together. What's your advice on finding one? Otaku, hopefully. Okay. Very interesting question, Johnny, given that my wife, as I'm sure you know, is Japanese. So, yes, let's start with the decline, the demographic decline. It is serious. The joke is there's more depends than diapers in Japan right now. And there does seem to be pockets of reversal going on. So when I was just in Japan a few weeks back, I was actually surprised seeing all the kids. There was a lot of parents with kids, a lot of parents with strollers, and strollers with 2 seats in. They have 2 kids there. So I was very fascinated by the number of 2 child households I was seeing there. So I don't have the data to suggest beyond just the pockets, because there are some areas that are experiencing little baby booms right now. But for the nation as a whole, it's going through a serious demographic decline. But as is South Korea, as is China, as is much of Asia, right? As is all of the West. So it's not like Japan is alone in this. So this is the problem I have with some of the theses that are out there, like Peter Zion and so forth, that demographic decline, particularly in China or Russia, are geopolitically disastrous. That would be true if everybody else was growing and they're shrinking, but everybody else is shrinking right along with them, as it were. There's plenty of population increase in sub-Saharan Africa, Pakistan, India, and the like. So it's concerning for Japan. Not so concerning, I would say, geopolitically. I think their role geopolitically in the world remains the same as long as their decline is paralleled by China. Yeah, in terms of Japanese girlfriend, I mean, look, you're going to love and adore whoever God has in store for you. But people talked about it. Cross-cultural relationships have an interesting dynamic, and oftentimes we're attracted to other cultures in terms of familial marital relationships. Because those cultures tend to actually have more traditionalist sentiments just ingrained in them. And I remember my mother-in-law making fun of my dear bride, who's the greatest wife anyone could ever dream of having. But I remember my mother-in-law would always, my Japanese mother-in-law would always just shake her head when I don't know, we were talking around the dinner table or something about my wife and her housekeeping, whatever. And my mother-in-law would say, "Oh, you're such a bad wife. You're such a bad wife." That's not something I would ever imagine hearing in American. And this is not a diss. It's just cultural difference. I never imagined hearing an American mother-in-law say, "Oh, you're such a bad wife," or something like that. In Japan, being a wife and again, this is changing a little bit. Obviously, there's some contemporary Western sentiments that are seeping in, or whatever you want to. But in Japan, generally speaking, traditionalist domestic values still very much pervade even among working women. There's still a sense, if they're married, that they come home and that there are traditional roles that play out. I'm not saying it's right or wrong or anything like that. And so a lot of us we're attracted to those more trad wife dynamics. And while we've talked about it on this channel, trad wife is making a huge comeback right now on TikTok. Viral videos of traditional housewives and their day, and a typical day, and Gen Zers are like, "Dang, that's fascinating. I've never seen that before. That's really neat. I want to grow up and I want to have a home, and it's so much work, but it's so rewarding raising children and having a successful and intimate and beautiful marriage. And maybe career isn't all that's pen up to be." So I think you're seeing the trad wife phenomenon happening as a whole, but there are cultures where it's ready-made. It never left. It's not experiencing a renaissance because it's still very much intact. And so I think Japan is one, because Japan is an incredibly ritualized traditionalist nation. I think Japan just happens to be one of those nations that guys who are looking for trad wives are very attracted to. So no, I just learn the language, go out there, go to a Japanese church. There are Japanese churches you'll find here or there in the United States, and see, and just the best thing you could do in the end is just love her and appreciate her as a human being. She's not Japanese or anything. She's a human being, and as long as you show that you are committed to honoring her as a human being and as a person, I think you'll be good to go. So there you go. There, relationship advice from the Patriot Professor. All right, Johnny, you're the best. Thank you, my friend. Hi, Q. Love you, man. From across the pond. Do you remember how John Kirby used to clinch his hands together? He doesn't do. I guess not, John. That's a great observation. He used to clinch his hands and he doesn't do it anymore. Maybe he's been told by people, stop. You're revealing too much. Have a John Smith's not on me, but think of me when you have it. We don't get John Smiths over here. I miss that from my days across the pond. Thank you, HiQ. Mitchell, how do you think we could do, or what do you think we do about China pushing their influence on us through Hollywood? Good question. It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, Mitchell. I don't. I mean, we've got The Sound of Freedom is support films that are pure patriot through and through, or just that are good, wholesome films and the like. That's one thing. Can I push back on that a little bit, Mitchell? Let me, in full appreciation of the question, I get what you're saying, but I don't know. More and more, I'm thinking, you're probably going to accuse me now of Chinese influence, but hear me out on this. I don't think China's our enemy. And what I mean by that is every time we put our attention on China or Russia or Iran or Saudi Arabia or whatever, we're deflecting attention from where it belongs 1,000%, and that is Washington, D.C. Now, they're not mutually exclusive. Obviously, China has bought influence in our government and in our entertainment and wider culture because they're so bad in soft power. You know this, right? So Russia and China are historically very, very bad with soft power. Soft power is using cultural influence to create a tacit sense of support for your political agenda rather than overt, explicit attempts to get it and say either you support us or else, right? It's better to be able to just tacitly, through osmosis, through cultural osmosis, bring people in alignment with your culture. That's called soft power. We're the best at it. The United States is number one. I mean, our Hollywood pop culture influence around the world, second to none. We're amazing. We're losing it with hard power, but our soft power is still very powerful. So what China figured out is they could take their economic power and use it to their benefit by exploiting our great soft power. And they do it by buying influence into the soft power, right? But I like the way Trump used to say it. Trump would rail against the way China was taking advantage of us in trade. He would absolutely rail against them. But then he would turn around and say, you know what? I'm not blaming them. This is what made Trump so brilliant. I'm not blaming China. I'm not. They're very smart. It's our people that are so easily bought. That's who I'm blaming. I'm blaming our corrupt officials in DC. I'm blaming our corrupt corporate America. I'm blaming our corrupt Hollywood industry. That's who I'm blaming. I don't blame the Chinese. Of course, they're going to buy influence with such easily bought people. Of course. So the best way we could push back against China is to push back against our own corrupt elite. So let's keep our eyes on that prize. And that's what Trump would do. Again, you get your cake and eat it too. You push back on China's trade influence by putting me in office and getting rid of corrupt, easily bought politicians. That's how you do it. Don't blame China. Blame the corrupt politicians. Blame the corrupt folks in Hollywood who were so easily bought. Get rid of them. And so I guess, the pushback would be go see The Sound of Freedom. Go support those films that support our values. My wife and I are going this week, and I can't wait. I hear it's rough. I hear it's rough to watch, but I hear it's absolutely amazing. So there you go, Mitchell. Great question. JP, why are we excited by Trump's polling numbers? Yes, I know you're going to say this, and that's excellent, JP. Why are we excited by Trump's polling numbers? The deep state is hell-bent on throwing him in prison. Political prisoners could be kept in prison without due process. They can do this to Trump. Actually, I don't think they can. So, first of all, I don't think you can put a president in prison because he's protected by the Secret Service. Robert Barnes has an interesting thing on this. If he were in prison, it would be house imprisonment. It wouldn't be an actual federal prison, as I understand it. Number one, just putting that in perspective. But no, granted, the deep state is doing everything it possibly can to thwart this, but they can't. I mean, Jonathan Turley, my namesake, has pointed out constitutionally, we can elect a person in prison for president. The people decide who's the president, not a bunch of unelected bureaucrats and deep state operatives. We decide. So there's nothing they can do to stop us from electing him as president, as I understand. There's nothing they can do to stop it. The key here is the soaring poll numbers show that people aren't buying the indictments. They're not buying the deep state's attempt at thwarting Trump. So the hope was, and this is where I think the Republican operatives were whispering serpently in DeSantis's ear, hey, all these indictments, they're going to bring Trump down. The only way that would work is if people kind of said, all right, yeah, well, now he's been indicted. Yeah, he should definitely, I can't support him anymore. They actually thought that was going to happen, that people were going to turn their backs en masse on Trump once he started getting indicted. And the opposite is happening. He's getting more popular. Whereas Biden, the more evidence that's amounting with his corruption, the less popular he's getting. So it's this inverse correlative going on there. So I would argue it's evidence that the deep state is their narratives and their shenanigans are not working. They're not working. They're not swaying the mass of public sentiment. And all they're doing in the end is undermining their own legitimacy. And as Victor Davis Hanson argued, I mean, you don't have a state without legitimacy. I mean, you can have a tyranny for a while, but even Eastern Europe and Soviet Union found out fairly quickly that those tyrannies without the trust of the people collapse. So there you go, JP. So I hear you. I know it's frustrating. And again, you guys know I mean, this channel does focus on the brighter side of things, but the brighter side of things is a legitimate version. So what you want to do is take what I'm giving you, weigh it out, make sure you have a balance there. But I just think the deep state they're going to be absolutely thwarted in trying to thwart Trump from getting elected. They're going to do everything they can. And again, they may in 2024, let everybody know this, they may win in 2024, but they may win on the surface. But what Hanson is arguing is in terms of the moral legitimacy needed for an effective and sustainable governance erodes. And so in the end, they lose either way. That's in the end. Thanks, JP. Awesome. VW Bear, attendance at a Biden rally are shorter than Spencer Cox's show. Oh, VW Bear, you're too much, man. That is awesome. Yeah, I mean, his Biden rallies, 81 million votes. Yeah, right. Yeah, just see Rogan. Hey, thanks for joining. Thanks for seeing what we all saw 3 years ago. Now, welcome to the party, pal. 3 years late. Awesome, VW Bear. Great. Thank you for that. Kyung Anderson, super sticker. Thank you, sir. Very, very kind. Thank you, Kyung. Raz Grizz. Styx Hexenhammer has basically been saying recently that Congress might vote to bar Trump from running in the election. Do you see that? I don't know if they can. Constitutionally, I don't think they can, as I understand it. The only people on the planet that can vote, can choose the president is the people. That alone goes to the consent of the governor. I don't think they can. They may try, it may be symbolic, but of course it's not going to happen. It's not going to pass, so it's irrelevant. I like Styx, by the way. Styx's analysis is really good. I mean, Styx is very sophisticated, very insightful analysis. UP Shoot, my friend, about the live Bible study gauntlet. Oh, you're going to keep reminding me of that, aren't you? Just keep reminding me. Keep on bringing the guitar back and bringing on an online Bible study. Those are two things we're going to have to find some time to do. It really, when all said and done, UP Shoots, it's a time issue. When all said and done, it's just being able to find time. We're doing 4 vids a day now. I don't know if you guys saw that. We're upping our game. We're getting 4 vids a day in live streams. We've got our Insiders Club, our Courageous Patriots Insiders Club, live Q&A every week. So a lot of stuff going on, business meetings and so on. So we'll see. And thank you for the gift as well. So keep me accountable there. Any more? Charles, sir. In Idaho and other red states away from the coast, rural areas, and our popular centers on traditionalists, populace. Amen on that. In Idaho, Ada Canyon, Kootenai, Boneville, Twin Falls, Bennett counties are generally conservative. Oh, my heavens. Yeah. This is if you check out my video on who would win if a civil war were to break out, this is one thing that actually scholars are looking at. They're like, how could blue areas actually win a civil war? Because the moment a civil war were to break out, and God forbid, but the moment it were to break out, red states and blue states cease to exist. We're now regions. And when you look at blue regions, they're all just like, specks here or there, all just scattered haphazard around the country, but primarily located on the coast, western and eastern coasts. The map is like entirely red when you just look at counties. It's just red. And so we would have this ability not only just to blockade all these other blue stuff, but the way we would be able to coalesce and come together as a single like MAGA nation. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So something's brewing there, Charles. Something's brewing there with with the Greater Idaho movement. You know, I just interviewed them in a great video last weekend. If you guys haven't checked that out. Check out my video from last Saturday. I think we had it put up. It's got like 200,000 views. It's awesome. It's a half an hour interview with the founder of the Greater Idaho movement. Something's happening here where counties are starting to align. And if counties start to align in a way that's trans-state, in many respects, blue states die. There'll be a few left over. Connecticut, for example, I think where I grew up, every county, it's like, I forget what it is, 6 counties. Every county's blue. Delaware, every county could go blue, but even Delaware, Suffolk County, the Southern County can go red often. There's very few, right? Rhode Island. I mean, that's about it. There's very few states where the vast majority of its counties, very few blue states where the vast majority of its counties are blue, right? So Oregon, what are they, 32 counties or so? 27 of the 32 consistently vote Republican. If you just got rid of Multnomah County alone, the Republican would always win by 10 points. You know, I mean, this is what I mean. They've centered all of their population in single sporadic areas. And if red counties start doing what the Greater Idaho movement or Move Oregon's Borders movement is doing, we can actually, in many respects, form a mass MAGA nation. It's and totally interconnected. There wouldn't be any spot where the red stops. The red has it might get a little bump, right? A little oval bump or something in a city, like Atlanta or something like that. But the red mass just doesn't end. And you're absolutely right. That is pure traditionalism. It's pure populism. It's pure nationalism. And it may be the makings of precisely that kind of MAGA renaissance throughout the nation. So I think you're onto something, Charles. Awesome. Generalissimo. Why does it seem that the 2020 thing is on the back burner for many? Many seem to not want to use every tool necessary. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Again, I think it hurt us in 2022. We talked about that ad nauseum with ballot harvesting. So I'm with you, Generalissimo. Whoever gets the Republican nomination, whoever gets a shoe-in at this point is going to have a mass strategy to make sure 2020 never, ever happens again. And they're going to have to bring in the brightest minds and you name it. Again, the good news is we have people like Musk and so forth on our side. So it's very different than 2020 in that sense, in terms of social media, geography, as it were. And just even the latest ruling by the federal judge that's making it illegal for Biden's communication wing to be having contact with social media outlets. I don't know if you saw that. That happened 2 days ago. That's pretty impressive. That's really neat. The media flipped out over that one. So it's not the same landscape as it was in 2020, but it's still against us. And we have to step up to the challenge. Absolutely. And with patriots like you insisting on it, we'll do it. But you need to be there. Again, keep in mind, Democrats are on their heels, particularly with the Senate. Democrats are defending 23 Senate seats, more than twice as many as Republicans. So they are on there, just like we were in the last election. We were defending 2 out of every 3 seats or so were having to be defended by a Republican in 2022 in the Senate, and we only lost 1 in the end. Now it's with the Democrats. It's a 2-to-1 advantage for Republicans. They only have 11 seats up for re-election or open, 23 seats for the Democrats. And that's in places like West Virginia and Montana and Ohio. I mean, really deep red places. So they're in trouble. They're definitely in trouble there. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But great point, Generalissimo. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for all your support. And that's it, gang. Awesome. Another live stream Friday in What it would Rush would say, in the canister, in the tank. I don't know what you would say. Guys, you're awesome. God bless you. Keep up the great work. Watch. We got plenty more videos coming today and throughout the weekend. Enjoy them. Again, remember, every Saturday we've got a new segment in our parallel police, our parallel civilization, rising lots of amazing Patriot services that you can avail yourself of, enrich yourself, your family, and the like. It's absolutely amazing. All right. God bless, guy. Have a wonderful weekend.